we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time watching, welcome. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, if you ever want to reach out to the podcast for any reason, if you want to let us know about a new topic or just want to let us know how you feel, always hit us up at our DMs on Twitter or Instagram, Bigmark Podcast or the Bigmark Pod, respectively. You can always check us out on our Patreon if you want to donate to the podcast. There's a few different tiers there. And if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you're liking the videos and subscribing to the channel and doing all that fun stuff, sharing the podcast. That's always the most we can ask of everybody. And, you know, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. But if you can tell your friends, you know, if you tell one person, we can double the podcast listenership overnight. So again, thank you so much for being here. Could have been anywhere else in the world, but you chose to be here tonight, and I appreciate that. You know, I was watching a video, came up on Instagram or something. It looked like some like hockey analysis podcaster, ex-NHLer that I don't know, unfortunately, his name. I didn't look into his name, but he made this video, and it just kind of got me thinking throughout the day. I saw it earlier, but it kind of got me thinking about like men's league sports. So adult sports leagues is, I guess, what we're going to call it in general, but I've only played in, again, quote unquote men's leagues. But this video was saying, you know, he's starting to see more violence in men's league hockey now, and it's like beer league hockey, is what they usually call it. Beer league sports, maybe we can call it that. That's a little bit more fun. But again, that might be a click wheel term. If anyone doesn't know what a beer league is, it's like a men's league, you know, amateur sports, just organized, whether it's just by, you know, 60 people, like 60 dudes, and they just split up into a few teams, or it's like kind of a bigger thing, and there's like gym space. Like I've played for all types of different leagues that are kind of run out of, like, by a Hamilton organization, the town that I'm in. City organizations, I should say. Obviously, intramural sports kind of, I think, would fall in there a little bit, but that's obviously a little bit more tied to school and university. But I've also played like where the leagues, like, you're getting sweet jerseys, they're doing photo shoots, like it's a whole big deal. But still amateur, that, you know, you're paying a fee, and no one's necessarily a pro. Maybe you played in high school a little bit and you're just kind of like keeping the dream alive, but it's organized. It's not just like pickup. That's kind of the big difference, is like, it's not just a bunch of dudes out there. Like, you have referees usually. And I've really only played basketball in like a true men's league. I guess I was in a dodgeball league once. I think that's it. But like, the first like quote unquote men's league I ever played in was HABA, which is Hamilton Amateur Basketball Association, which was, I guess it would have been like a house league at one point potentially, but again, you know, different levels, different age groups, men's and women's basketball was put together, and it was run mostly out of Mohawk College here in Hamilton, out of the gym there. And again, you could sign up and get into it, and my first foray into it was when I was playing high school basketball, and my coach thought it was a good idea, and it was a good idea for us to enter in as a team. So like basically our entire high school team entered into HABA as a team and played, because I think you had to be like at least 16 maybe, or 15. Like, I think was like there might have not even been a technical minimum age, right? Because again, it's like a men's league, so like presumably there's gonna be men, you know, not to be patriarchal, but I mean like adults. It's like an adult league, so like, you know, usually that kind of alone is, but if you're good enough, you're good enough, right? Like, I mean, I was 6'4" in grade 8, so I was like 13 years old as like a full size person. But you know, I had to develop the skills, but that happened because I was able to, you know, enter the court and start to play with guys that were older. When I played rep, we scrimmaged against guys from McMaster, the university team in town, and like that just makes you infinitely better. So it's always better. It's always good to play against people that are better, but not when you're like underdeveloped and they're so much older and stronger that you're going to get hurt. Anyway, so that was my technically first foray. And again, it's great. And that Habbo was really good. Like you had like super solid referees, like literal black and white stripe refs like that. The only difference is they would wear shorts because it was a little bit more casual. But like they were the same refs that would have reffed university games. Like it was really well put together. I don't know if it survived COVID. I swear, I haven't heard much about Haba in a while. I hope they're still around. What are you gonna do? But again, like this hockey fight thing really, sparked my imagination about all this stuff, because it's like, it's fucking beer league, it's fucking men's league. Like, what are we doing here? And this is what the person who posted it, the dude who was doing all the talking was like, why don't we work together here? Why don't we play around? And that's like a really interesting thought with men's league, right? Because one of the biggest things with these amateur leagues is that obviously you don't have a coach. Well, not obviously, but most of the time you don't have a coach. Like in my instance that I just told you, that where it was like my high school team, we joined, we actually had a coach. No other team we're playing against has like a proper coach. Yeah, you have like maybe the captain of the team, but like realistically, you're out there kind of governing yourself, and that can kind of go two ways, right? Because sometimes you have guys, and this was mentioned in the video too, sometimes you have guys that are just like holding on to the dream. They're bitter every time they fucking strap on their skates, or whatever sport it might be. There's it's not just hockey. Every men's league sport, and certain sports that aren't as easy to just drop, like football, for instance. You don't really have like a pickup league for football. You have like semi-pro leagues almost, where you have to have a lot more backing. You definitely have to have coaching and equipment and all this stuff put into it. But there's like lower levels of like men's football and stuff that exists that isn't the CFL or the NFL, and not even like a major other league. It's just like, hey, there's some leagues around like Ontario. Who knows? Like there's a lot of like lower tier stuff, A, B, C hockey teams that people can keep playing that sport for a long time, not necessarily make a lot of money, not necessarily make any money. In fact, maybe just lose money, potentially powered by the fact that maybe they might make it in the league someday. Like there's crazy thoughts some of these dudes like, / just like holding on to the dream and just like playing as long as you can, which inherently isn't so bad. Like all the power to you. Keep playing as long as you can. But sometimes these dudes get to a point where they start to lose their physical ability, and they start to make up for it in other ways. They start to get a little chippier, or again, they start taking it out on people in different fashions. I mean, this is from intramurals, but again, kind of like, amateur organized sport. And we were playing a team, and, we're all in the same school together, so it's not like we're never going to see each other. But I was playing on this one team, and it was like the highest level of competition. So like anyone who's in it, it was serious about it. But again, like it's fucking university intramurals. Like, let's chill. And I guess like, so my buddy Charlie on the team had like boxed out a guy. I guess the dude took it as a little bit too rough because he kind of fell over himself. I think Charlie just like stepped on his foot. It wasn't even a big deal. It wasn't malicious. But as Charlie was running back on offense, this guy ran at him and just delivered a huge bow to the back of the head. And it was like, what the fuck is going on here, guys? Like, who cares this much? Even when it's like really serious, like, what are you doing? Like hurting each other again. There's always something about going outside the sport that becomes, so questionable, where you're like, you've thrown out the unspoken rule or the unspoken contract that we signed at the beginning of this game, that we're going to play the rules of the game by you delivering a bow to the back of someone's head. You've really thrown everything out the window. So it's interesting. Again, I don't know if this guy has been studying this for a while, or maybe over the years beer leagues just weren't as violent. And again, this is the thing, like, probably they weren't as violent because people were like, why the fuck are we beating each other up? We got work to do later. But people just take fucking things way too seriously these days. It's bizarre. And again, like I said, it's not like I've never seen it. It kind of happened in intramurals, and I totally understand that guys people get competitive, guys and girls too. I've seen girls freak out in sports. But, people get competitive when they play sports, and there's just something that is awoken. I know there's something that's awoken in me when I'm on the court, but I've never necessarily been like a violent player. And football definitely taught me to kind of like get my licks in between the whistles, so to speak. But again, that's the thing. That's the thing, right? With sports like football. You can't, like I mentioned before, you can't really have a men's league. Like, you can't just pick it up. You can't just do it. There's other sports where you can kind of do things on the fly. Again, hockey, soccer, basketball. You can, even baseball, you can have a general plan, but kind of play by play. You can kind of just go through things, right? So these are the sports that definitely lean towards, amateur sport leagues, beer leagues, so to speak. And again, like I said, I haven't played in many other ones, but I've had friends that have played in all different ones, and there's all types of different levels of competition. There's usually like a rec level, like recreational, all the way up to like competitive, however many intermediary levels in between those things. And that obviously kind of denotes like how serious you're going to be. Right? Like, if you've never played any of these amateur sport leagues, you're probably going to want to lean towards a rec league. But if you have played that sport, sometimes those rec leagues are like super fucking janky, and like they're like people that are like adults but have never played that sport before, and they're just like, oh, I just want to try it out and like see if I'm good at it. So that can get like super weird. I've also played in those leagues where, like, which this is almost impossible to do. The leagues don't necessarily vet the teams to see like what category, or what level of competition they should be like sorted into. They need to put like the sorting hat on some of these teams and kind of decide, because and that usually comes down to like the pride and well, not necessarily the pride, but the decision that the team makes themselves, and say, well, how hard of a season do we want to have for each other, right? Like, do we want to try to win this thing? So sometimes you get teams that are ringers, and they come in, they just blow everyone out of the water. I've played in beer leagues, men's leagues, adult leagues that there's guys and girls on the team, right? Like, there's like any kind of different things can happen, right? So finding the right league is tough. Right. And then finding the right team is tough, this year. And as it stands right now, if anyone from the team is listening to this podcast, shout out Tropics. Hopefully we're actually a team right now, because it's January 9th today, and we're supposed to be playing our first game January 14th, or this weekend, whatever. But we just got an email yesterday saying, hey, like, we don't have enough teams. We might not be able to do 5-on-5 on the day that you guys signed up for. And it was like, fuck. Like, all this work, we knew it was going to be a lot of work. Me and my buddy Luke, like, we had been talking about like, hey, we should play on a men's league team. And we had in the past, but it was kind of like we were like the extra two guys on this team. So there was like 12 or 14 players on the team. And like, if everyone showed up, it fucking sucked. Like, that's the paradox with these sports leagues, is that when you have a team, so basketball, obviously you need 5 players on the court. So literally minimum you need 5 to play a game, but no one wants to play an entire game. You need to have some type of substitutes. And like, even like in high school and stuff, you usually don't carry more than like 12 or 13 guys. And usually like the past 10, those extra guys are like really extra guys. It's really like, you just need kind of like 2 lines, so to speak, in basketball. So like 10 is fine. 10 is totally fine. But the thing is that the more players you have, the less playing time each player is going to have. Because, you want to have, everyone's paid their money. And don't get me wrong, that kind of leads to some issues down the line too, where people are like, fuck, I paid my money. Like, I want to get my fucking time. I want to get my shots in. I'm going to fucking hog the ball essentially and just fuck everybody. But then if you have too little players, like if you only say like, okay, we're only going to have 6 players on the team or 7 players on the team, just so we're keeping it low, we'll just keep fucking running people through. All it takes for a couple guys not to show up that day, and then you just have 5. So, I've played in both scenarios, and I'll tell you right now, both fucking suck. Both suck. The too many sucks because you don't get warm, and people are fucky and don't really have like self-awareness, and you have to have like this self-awareness with the amateur leagues where it's like, hey, I'm starting to get a little tired here. Maybe I should like take myself out. Again, no coach. You don't have someone saying like, yo, get off the fucking court. So sometimes you have to be really selfless. And that's the thing with men's league sport is sometimes that's really hard to find. It's hard to find a team that kind of understands basketball well enough, or whatever sport you're playing. Now, I played a lot of basketball. I played at a pretty high level, so my standard is very high. So like what I need really is like a player to have at least played like throughout high school and like kind of understands like that to be successful in a beer league, you have to be selfless. It's actually really important because there's no structure. The only thing each one of us can do to benefit each other is be super selfless. So I'm talking setting screens, passing it, like not being selfish in any sense of the word. Because that's just going to throw everybody off. Like I'm talking, we don't need chuckers. So we don't need people as soon as they get the ball fucking shooting it. We don't need ball hogs. They're just, running around with the ball. Some of these amateur leagues don't have like shot clocks. So you have guys like just running around. I don't know how much this applies to other sports, but I'm kind of talking more about basketball. And defensively, you kind of need to understand like a pretty basic zone, because sometimes in men's leagues you have to go into a zone, for other reasons, just because there's mismatches and things like that. Or people don't necessarily understand like the intricacies of like a help defense. It's a little bit easier to do like a zone instead of like a rotation man-on-man kind of thing. So, and again, the selflessness of being like, all right, I'm starting to turn the corner, like, however long your shift is on the court, I'm starting to turn the corner of diminishing returns. I got to take myself off the court. Or if you see a guy that you can't guard, you got to be like, yo, I need someone else to help me guard it, whatever, right? Again, you don't have a coach, so you have to imagine you have this coach kind of telling you what to do. So again, like when Luke and I were talking about getting a team together, these are all the reasons where we're like, it's so much easier to organize your own thing, because at least you can bring some people together. But once we did it, we're like, fuck. Not everyone has a lot of time. We only know so many people that are still like around and that want to do it, that don't have families. Like we're starting to get to the age where people are starting to have kids and shit. Not that Luke has a son too, but like, again, we have to find all these people, and that's why Sunday night turned out to be the best night. So it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough finding the perfect team. Don't get me wrong. There's some great teams, and like some of the best teams I've ever played against in like these habit teams are like guys that like all went to high school together. Like if I was able to get like practically all like an entire, like I went to St. Mary's Catholic school in Hamilton. If I got like all people that went to St. Mary's that all played for our coach, basically in and around the 5 years or the 4 years that I was at school, we'd be fucking killing it, because we all kind of understand the same thing. We all were like kind of taught the same way. We understand some of the lingo, I'm sure. Like, again, not everyone forgets, not everyone remembers every little thing, but like, you'd be really surprised. Like, man, we practiced 5 days a week, we'd practice 3 days a week, 2 games a week, during regular season and then like tournaments and stuff, like played a lot of basketball. So like that stuff doesn't completely leave you, right? So that would be like the most ideal thing. And I've played with a bunch of friends that did play at St. Mary's before. So, but never an entire team. So again, those are the best teams. And I have played against some of those teams and they're really, really hard to beat. But again, that's the thing. That's the thing where when you are playing with essentially strangers, again, that whole selflessness thing comes in, and it's such an exercise in that, in like kind of losing your ego and kind of playing without it. And, you know, it's interesting. Don't get me wrong. You know, sometimes you got to get yours, you know, like I said, everyone paid their money. You got to get out there and you got to fucking do it. But again, it works out much better when you're selfless. And I don't know. I mean, that's the interesting thing about sport, is that personality really does come into how you play. In certain sports, you can express your personality a little bit more. You know, obviously I was a big football player and basketball player. Those are my two major sports that I have the most experience in. I've played a little bit of soccer. I threw a little bit of shot put in high school. I swam a little bit. But by far, basketball and football are my two main sports. And football is great, but you're almost more like conditioned to be a robot. There's underlying military aspect to football, training camp, and the way things are kind of set up. You're really kind of like broken down and rebuilt into the system. I was an offensive lineman, so I played like with 4 other guys, and we played kind of the same position at the same time as this one unit, but yet individuals at the same time, which is an interesting concept to think about that way. But again, you're wearing a helmet, you have all this padding on, you kind of become a little bit faceless, and you kind of become a little bit of a robot out there. And again, football is about repetition to perfection, where each play, every person on that field, all 12, if we're playing Canadian football, all 12 guys have to do their job perfectly for those plays to work. So there's not a lot of room for expression of personality, where basketball, you have so much more room for personality. You're out there practically naked. You're wearing a shirt and shorts and shoes. That's it. You know, compared to other sports that have a lot of equipment. You're out on a wooden court. You know, it's the floor. It's not ice. It's not grass. It's inside, climate controlled. And it's you know 5-on-5, but like everyone's out there able to score, able to do at any point. One guy can, or one person on that court can elevate and become the best person on that court. It doesn't matter. Nothing's holding you back. But there's a lot more room for expression. Creative. It's a very creative sport because there's a little bit more flow to it. Like, again, I didn't play any hockey, but as much as I would imagine hockey being, you know, kind of that flowing nature, you know, where yes, you can have set plays, yes, you can set screens, yes, you can do things in basketball, but there's a lot of times where you're just kind of going up and down the court and you're just reacting to exactly what's on the court. You know, guys that have good court vision are celebrated because they're able to see what's happening as it's unfolding and kind of going ahead with it. You can see the expressions on people's faces. You can hear everything pretty well because it's inside. It's not so loud unless it's like a fucking huge like stadium game, arena game, whatever you want to call it. But again, like, you know, it's that, you know, Michael Scott said it, but I used to think about this a lot before, that, you know, the big difference between basketball and football. Football is like rock and roll. It's heavy metal, crashing, smashing, plastic on plastic, bone on bone. But basketball is more like jazz. You know, you're able to kind of like scoop it, pass, wow. You know, it's like a little bit more like kind of like free form, right? So that's why it lends itself to men's leagues, to pick up. You know, you can play pickup basketball. That's why I think it's beautiful. You can just say, hey, you got 5 guys, we got 5 guys, whatever. You can play with 2. You can play 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4. You can do whatever it fucking takes. I mean, you can't do more than 5-on-5. Like, let's be real here. But you can do something, right? And that's the beauty, and that's the thing that I love about basketball for sure. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to continue on and, you know, knock on wood, yes, obviously things happen and anything can happen, but, you know, it's a great way to help you stay in shape. But again, it's also important to stay strong and you know, keep the body tight, or take care of yourself, I should say. Especially, you know, I'm 32 now, and, you know, getting into the age where you can't just kind of fucking jump into certain things. Plus, I have existing injuries to begin with that fucking suck. So I know how to keep my beak out of danger. I'm not going to go too hard, especially right off the bat. But again, you know, I got to kind of, and it'll keep me more in check here. It's going to hopefully keep me more honest. Because, you know, if you go back a few episodes, you'll watch my fitness journey podcast. I talked about kind of keeping you guys up to date. Well, let me keep you up to date. I haven't been doing shit. Super sorry. Love y'all. I don't mean to let any of you down. I feel awful. But this is why I'm doing this fucking men's league. And hope it works out, because people, if you're listening to this and you play basketball in the Burlington area, average Joes, reach out, start a team so we can fucking play against you, because god damn it, if this doesn't happen, I'm going to be so pissed. Anyway, it's not like they're going to keep our money. They'll refund us and all this shit, which sucks for them too, obviously. Like, oh my god. There's so much money to be had for these men's leagues too. That's another thing, which maybe we'll touch on another podcast, but you can make a lot of money if you run one of these leagues, it looks like too. So find a gym, run a men's league. I'll play in it. Hit me up. Anyways, thank you all for listening. I love you all. Hit us up on our Instagram, Twitter, Bigmark Podcast, Bigmark Pod. Like, subscribe, Patreon. Love y'all. Go shoot some hoops. Peace.